Internet access is a very common topic, and there are many questions related to it. Here we mentioned bandwidth rates. But before I get into bandwidth, what is more important than bandwidth is the stability of the device's internet access, ensuring that we have an uninterrupted internet connection. Therefore, partly for this reason, we recommend and support cable internet access. Therefore, internet access through Wi-Fi is not a recommended solution in this case, considering its unreliability. So you need to choose a method where you plug a UTP cable into the device providing the network internet source, with the other end of the UTP cable connected to the validator machine, and it will receive internet access through the wire connection. The bandwidth. Here we previously indicated that we choose an internet access with a nominal bandwidth of 500 megabit per second gigabit or gigabit. We might not have added nominal here. This is where I would like to point out that when service providers sell their various internet packages, they usually display the nominal bandwidth everywhere because it looks good and the big numbers, like 500 megabit per second or gigabit 1000 megabit per second internet, are impressive. But the truth is that this nominal bandwidth is very rarely the actual speed in reality. This practically means that under ideal conditions it could be this much, but unfortunately the reality is only a fraction of this. That's why we said it's worth choosing the highest possible bandwidth, preferably going for the gigabit option. But practically what is much more accurate here is the amount of guaranteed bandwidth. According to regulation, service providers are required to specify the guaranteed bandwidth, and if they do, they must also maintain it. But without guaranteed bandwidth, if you can get 30 to 40 megabit per second, that is already perfectly sufficient. And if this can be measured on the device, that it is actually connected via cable, and you can measure this much, it will be adequate. By the way, the blocks are not that large, but it's worth considering that if we already have internet access, it's not just our validator machine using it. For example, other family members might be watching a movie, downloading a movie, the kid might be torrenting, or another family member might be playing online games, and all of this consumes bandwidth. Therefore, it's better to over-provision ourselves, which is why this higher number is mentioned. However, if this bandwidth is not available, it's not a problem. A bandwidth of 30 to 40 megabit per second can be completely sufficient depending on how many people are using the same network at the same time. Even with 20 megabits per second, it's not a tragedy, but there's a slightly higher risk that we won't be able to upload our block in time. Validation can still work with this, but if we have the opportunity, it's better to over-provision ourselves, as I mentioned. If we didn't have internet access, sometimes it happens that, for example, the service provider is doing maintenance or there is any technical issue and the internet goes out. Then, a backup solution, such as a mobile internet connection, could be suitable. Obviously, this will never be like a normal internet service, but it's better than nothing. In many cases, service providers offer such backup internet options, which essentially means that if our network device detects that it is not receiving internet access in the usual way, this backup solution will kick in. This often means that there is a SIM card inserted into the router, which switches to mobile internet access if our regular internet goes down. As a backup solution, this could be completely adequate, but it would be quite risky if someone wanted to connect there. validator machine using mobile internet. In theory, it might have results, but in practice, it is not certain that this is the best and safest choice. As I mentioned, a UTP cable is also necessary to ensure a wired connection. Here, a Cat5S or Cat6 UDP cable will enable completely adequate, fast data flow. And it is also important that we can plug this cable into our router, so there should be a free Ethernet port on our router. If not, then the solution can be to choose an additional connection option by involving a so-called switch. One of the inputs needs to be connected to the switch, and the other cables can connect to the network access through the switch. Well, it's practically like when there's not enough space in a power strip. So you add another power strip, and then it works from that point on. This practically expands the cable connection options. For example, TP-Link can be a good choice. Here. Then there were questions about whether this type of internet access, specifically satellite internet access, can be used for validation. Our answer here is that if the internet service is sufficiently stable and there are no long outages, it can be a completely suitable solution. Well, it can vary depending on the specific geographical location, whether the reception is better or not. It is important to ensure that the outdoor antenna is positioned in such a way that it is not shielded from any direction and has a clear view of the sky. It is also worth measuring our speed. If we can measure 30 to 40 megabits per second on the device, that is completely perfect. Again, I say, it can be good with less. The main thing is that it should be stable, and there should not be high latency. Here, many people often ask about Starlink. With Starlink, it is possible to measure. For example, how much time there was a complete service outage in the past 12 hours. This can be checked later in the management application. It is worth ensuring that there are no interruptions lasting several seconds because, for example, if we do not have internet access for a minute, it might be that we should have produced a block multiple times as it happened randomly, and then we can expect some penalties if our validator was active and it was supposed to produce the block. So this could be a problem here, but if there are no service outages, it can be completely suitable. It should be noted that satellite reception can be sensitive to certain weather conditions. For example, during storms and lightning, our reception might not be as good, but in clear weather conditions, it can be a perfectly good solution. So, it's important to factor in this potential fluctuation in service also. It's important to choose a wired connection here as well. There are models that come with an Ethernet port and can accept a cable by default, but there are also models that require an additional Ethernet adapter. This adapter needs to be connected to the existing unit, and the UTP cable can be inserted into the Ethernet adapter. This way, we can connect it to our computer. If someone's model does not include an Ethernet port, purchasing this adapter, for example, Starlink also sells such adapters, allows devices to be connected via cable instead of communicating over a Wi-Fi connection. A monitor is a hardware component that is really only needed during installation and configuration. And after that, it can be disconnected from the machine. The validator can function happily without a monitor. So, if someone already has a monitor they use for some purpose, they don't necessarily need to buy a new one because after completing the installation and settings, it can be disconnected, and the validation process will continue without it. I provided the information about it last time, so I don't want to go over it again now. I would just mention the keyboard and mouse in passing that after installation, they can be disconnected from the device. So, you don't necessarily need to buy a keyboard and mouse specifically for this purpose. If you already have a keyboard and mouse that you can borrow for the installation. Regarding the configuration, initially, the device can only be maintained and set up locally, meaning you will need to sit behind the machine. Later, a solution will be developed that allows the device to be monitored and managed remotely, for example, via a mobile phone using the internet. However, at the start, it can only be used with a local machine setup. The question often arises whether remote access will be enabled on the machines. We will practically provide a management software through which the necessary settings for operating and supervising the validator can be performed. This means that certain things can be seen through the management interface, and if there is a problem, it will be possible to intervene and see what is happening. If someone wants additional access to their machine beyond this software and doesn't just want to use this software, then anyone who knows how to set up an SSH connection in a Linux environment will be able to do so here as well, meaning the incoming SSH connection will not be disabled. The connection is practically not disabled, so if someone wants to configure in SSH into the machine remotely, they can easily do this through the terminal and can practically perform any task. Of course, this is more for those who are IT-oriented and like to tinker with the settings themselves and manage them this way, but otherwise, the necessary things will also be accessible through the management interface. I already provided some general information about the placement last time, so I don't want to go over it again. What I would like to emphasize is that separate documentation and guides will be prepared for the installation. For the configurations we recommend, minimal BIOS settings are required, and everything that needs to be done will be documented. However, we cannot deal with the BIOS settings of other motherboards because there are so many possibilities that we simply do not have the capacity to provide guides for all existing motherboards and their BIOS settings. Therefore, we can only support the 3 devices we recommended. Essentially, the 2 assembled machines have the same motherboard with the same BIOS settings, and a separate guide will be prepared for the installation. These will be relatively easy processes, so we have tried to modify the installation process in such a way that it does not cause problems even for those who do not like dealing with such things and are not familiar with installing and configuring operating systems. By simplifying the process and using the guides, anyone who can download a mobile application to their phone will definitely be able to do it. Even those who have never done this before will receive a lot of information from the various prepared materials. So we will provide all the help needed in these cases, this document. If new questions come in, we will update it and try to include all information that may affect a wider audience and is not too detailed. And the usual question is, when will the distribution of rewards, the validation process itself? And when rewards can be received, I cannot provide a specific date for this yet. The latest information I have here is that until 70% of the validator owners activate and start the validation. No rewards will be distributed. This is to ensure that no one misses out, because they might not be able to start their machine immediately. The question often arises whether there will be a test run. There will be a test run, so the validation process will not start in full operation initially during the test run. On one hand, it is possible to check that everything is working properly. This is one of the precise advantages from the development side, and the other is that validated owners can also try out what they will need to do during live operation. I can provide more details about this later, and not at this occasion. I really talked about the validator operating system and its installation method. We will discuss this in great detail on a separate occasion, but it wasn't worth squeezing it into this current session. We will dedicate a specific time for it, and then we will discuss it in great detail. I roughly covered these points. In the meantime, I see that a couple of questions have come in. Among these, it might be that.
Sooty, you did answer some. I don't know if. Yes, I answered the ones I could, and there are some that I wrote down separately. One of the questions was, because a lot came in, so I would start from the beginning, that you rewind it for me, and I will also answer that. Someone asked about those validators or validator pros who joined right at the very beginning. That is, after November 27, 2021. So, the following year, in April. By the end of May, validators and buyers of Validator Pro packages had the additional advantage of receiving their node machines from us, so they will naturally receive them from us on time. Therefore, everyone will receive their machines on time, so there is no need to worry about that. As you can see, there is still plenty of opportunity for this, and regarding what Jotzi mentioned earlier about the distribution of rewards, this certain 70%, it is also very important that, for example, someone who has received a letter stating that they have validator rights but will not be able to start at the very beginning because they cannot purchase the node device. In this case, there is no problem, so no penalty needs to be paid. The penalty only applies from the moment someone activates their validator device but does not participate in the validation process. So, it works from that point on, and don't forget, this applies to validator pros. That the delegates, those who place their Mosaic coins or NFTs with you, and if you don't validate and don't put it in chill mode beforehand, then the system will also deduct the penalty from the delegates. So that's why there will be an interface where delegates can see the different offers they can choose from, and based on that, they will place their various assets. There will be a default initial setting here, which does not mean it is the absolute minimum, but just to help everyone get started. And then of course each validator pro can come up with their own individual business strategy. However, you will also need to carefully consider whether you want to set a minimum amount so that someone cannot stake, say, a Mosaic coin for 3 USDT, but instead you might set it at 100 or 1000. This will be up to each individual to determine. There was a question about whether it can also run stably with an older 8th to 9th generation i5 processor.
Well, I can't say for sure about that because we haven't tried it with the 8th generation, and we don't have any experience with it. In theory, it could happen, but unfortunately, I can't say for sure.
And someone is asking if they understood correctly that the individual configuration can be paired with the SSD shown in the test for faster performance.
Well, these can be combined, yes. You just need to make sure that the motherboard is the same, although it is for both, but theoretically they can be combined, yes.
Someone asked if the chilt can be turned on remotely or not. You were talking about this at the end, but I wrote it down for myself in the meantime. So, let me quickly check. Someone here is asking what kind of USB drive will be needed. I assume they mean the size. Aha!
Briefly about the pen drive. I can say that a 16 or 30 gigabyte pen drive is completely sufficient, and you can't really get much smaller ones anymore. You need to ensure that the speed is not too slow, otherwise the installation process will be very lengthy. I don't have the exact numbers in my head right now, but there is a suggested speed price in the document uploaded to the web office, which is worth keeping. But there is no need for too much enthusiasm.
Someone is asking if you said that the OS will run from the pen drive and how it will be installed. There will be an interface from which you can download it, so because someone wrote that they need to send us a USB drive, no, you don't need to send a USB drive, you can download it. And as Jotzi mentioned, we always strive to make our developments user-friendly. And this is the case here as well. So, just like when you start up a mobile phone and it guides you through the process, you should imagine it the same way. So, you don't need to overthink it too much, and it's not by chance. That we recommend. Those machines that are ready and assembled. For those who are not familiar with it, it's really better not to experiment with it, because it's simpler if you go and buy that Lenovo device or the one we recommended, ask for a quote in the store. And from then on, this device will work. Because those who are interested and delve into the details, I see that those who are not familiar with it, first, it scares them, and second, it can really confuse them. If you have multiple validators, does each one need a separate USB drive?
To answer this question, I can say that a separate USB drive will not be necessary, but we will be able to discuss this in more detail on one of the upcoming occasions.
Someone writes that they have a notebook, but no keyboard or mouse. Well, I suggest, I'm sure, even though I don't know your workplace, but since this is not a long process, I think you should ask someone for a mouse and a keyboard if you don't want to buy one. I find it hard to believe that there isn't a mouse and a keyboard available in your environment, so it's worth solving it somehow. At the moment, I can't see approximately how much the machine's consumption is per hour.
I cannot provide an exact number right now, but we will measure it, and as soon as we have reliable results, we will share them there.
Here is a question about the deep configuration of laptops. We have tested a variety of machines. Some people have criticized us for showing, I don't know, a thinner one in the past years, when this one is now thicker. We always mentioned this from the very beginning, that we had no idea how the technology would evolve over the 3 years it took us to get here. And we couldn't test a machine on our own blockchain when we didn't even have a test blockchain. So, we also had to see that even though we have an HP, or had a Dell, and of course we tried other machines as well, even now that there was a demand for more details, for a more expensive configuration, unfortunately, that doesn't mean that the brand, despite being maybe thinner, works just as well. That's exactly why the guys worked so much and tested a lot of different machines. I know how many machines we bought, specifically because of this. There was also a question about whether it is possible to buy a machine from us. We have said several times that this will be possible, but it is not available yet. We are working on it, and we have also mentioned before that the reason for the delay is that we cannot provide the service background yet. So, it is important for us, and now we supposedly have a supplier with whom negotiations are ongoing, and it looks like we can manage to ensure that even though you are buying from us, they will be responsible for the warranty and service support. Legally, this wouldn't be the case, which is why this process is a bit more lengthy, but It will be done. We are striving to complete this as soon as possible. As I mentioned, as we move forward, it is also worth it for validators to check that the correct email address is provided, and to monitor it, because we will be sending information specifically to validators. As we progress, we will inform you about when and where you can download things onto the USB drive, and as various documentation materials are completed. As Attila put it, otherwise the blockchain could actually be started on the ship. Here, it really is the case that the whole thing had to be completed first, so that the documentation and the user manual could be prepared. So, essentially, these materials are being prepared now. And what also came to mind is that Jotzi mentioned that the 70% until it is activated, this process does not really start. But it means that according to our plans, this does not mean that all our business packages will end on October 12th. These packages will end, but there will be a transitional state. And during that period, it will still be possible to obtain rights to the validator device. So, of course, we will provide the exact information about this later. If you look at this last question, it's regarding the faster Samsung SSD article number, because I can't answer it right now.
One moment, I'm reading question. Well, based on the article number, I can't specifically tell what the difference is between the two. If it costs twice as much, then there is probably a significant difference between them. What I can say here is that when we assembled the configuration, as stated in the specification, we asked some stores from Caspi Comp Limited if this model is available. So I know that, for example, this model is available there, at least when we contacted them. They claimed it was available, so I can recommend them. I'm not sure if it's okay to mention a specific store here, but I hope it's not a problem.
And then, wait, yes, ask the next question. If you look
for multiple validator machines, the internet bandwidth must match the total value of the machines. For example, for 4 machines, it should be 4 by 30 gigabytes. It's not 30 gigabytes, but 30 megabits per second that the questioner is referring to, and actually, if there are multiple machines, then yes, it's worth considering that many for safety's sake.
A question came up, which I think we have definitely explained 3 times already, but I will say it once more to make sure everyone has the information. So when the blockchain is ceremoniously launched, it does not mean that all processes, including the rewards and distribution, will start immediately, as the machines need to be activated first. And now, at this moment, we already have more than 1,400 validators. But by then, there will probably be much more, so we cannot specify a fixed amount. Instead, 70% of the validators present at the time of launch need to activate. From that point, it will start, and there will be more information about smaller packages in the near future. I think that smaller packages have been continuously discussed not only in the future tense but also in the present and past, regarding what those with multiple smaller packages can expect. Well, the question is what package you chose, what your goal was with it, and whether you are taking advantage of the installment payment option or not. You have the opportunity to take advantage of this until the business packages are discontinued. I don't know the details about the packages you purchased, such as what packages they are, but of course, it would be good if you could turn to your sponsor, who can surely help. However, if for some reason they can't, feel free to write to customer service. Just include your ID number so we can find you, and then we'll check what packages you have and how far you are from validator eligibility. But since most of the smaller packages also contain NFTs, You can participate in the partial validation process. This will start when delegates can place their NFTs or Mosaic coins with the Validator Pros. You are currently collecting Mosaic coins in pre-token form week by week, as there is a fixed amount in the packages, and weekly distributions as well. You can see the current amount on the opening page of your web office. For example, with the Validator Pros, you can not only stake your NFTs, but as we mentioned earlier, we recommended that the amounts you received for NFT purchases in your discount accounts should not be converted to NFTs yet. This is because, in cases like this, or someone says they have multiple packages, I don't know how many NFTs they might theoretically have, and in what amounts. But if it turns out that there are more, then you can combine these amounts, and you might end up with a 5,000 NFT instead of a 750, 1,500, or 250, or multiple 250s. From this point on, it depends on your strategy how you choose and what NFTs you acquire with that amount. The NFTs themselves can be sold, gifted, or transferred, so they don't work like Validator writes. The special NFTs are different. But if something is still unclear about the smaller packages, please write, and I will connect you with your sponsor, and we will also try to help. Here, I just want to ask when the test period will start, but I admit that I don't have information about that.
I can't give a specific date either, but it will definitely be sometime after the event.
He says that my upload speed is only approximately 5 megabits per second. Ask the provider. Specifically, I was the example. Today I told the boys that the same thing happened to me, that there were only 5 here where I live in the residential park. Then it turned out that there are actually 17, which no one knew about, only the technician knew. And then it became 17, which is better than 5, which is otherwise tragic, but in this case, it might be the mobile internet, or what could be the Jotzi, help out. What could be the solution in such a case?
Well, yes, it's definitely worth checking if there's a better alternative, and then switching to that. Even if it's below 30, let's say, but that's still better than 5. The problem with mobile internet is that it often proves to be unstable, and service outages can occur relatively frequently, even in well-covered areas. So from this perspective, it might not be the best option. It might be worth trying it out for a month as a test, without a loyalty period, and measuring how much, or monitoring how often, there are outages. But this can practically vary by location and case. Unfortunately, I cannot provide a single good solution for this right now. It can vary for everyone depending on the opportunities available, where they live or prefer to validate.
We still have 2 questions, and then we will wrap up the evening. Please answer one of them, because I won't be able to address the motherboard type stability and functionality. There is this question. While you read it, I will answer the other one here. Regarding the smart Wi-Fi.
All right, could you help me with the date of the message?
21 to 22, Tibor.
There is a 22, 2122, a moment from Tibor. In terms of stability and operation, how does the type of formation affect validation, bus speed, or, in what respect? To be honest, I can't answer that right now. I will ask my more technically knowledgeable colleagues to see what specific differences this might entail. I can add that the BIOS settings depend on the motherboards. There may be differences in the BIOS settings that need to be done during installation. For example, some motherboards might be set up by default to look for Windows, and if it doesn't find it installed on the SSD, it will somehow download it. as soon as it detects an internet connection. We also encounter such motherboards. We ran into the issue that the BIOS settings were configured this way by default. It downloads some version of Windows from somewhere, and then the pre-installation starts, which can be problematic to turn off. It wouldn't be good if our validator suddenly got overwritten by some kind of Windows system and then suddenly asked us for a Windows license key. So I know that this kind of thing can happen. For more detailed answers, I will ask those who are more knowledgeable in this area.
One more thing, and this is the last one. The person here is asking about telecom smart Wi-Fi and other similar Wi-Fi related issues. If you listen to Jotzi, then you heard that the entire configuration and all the testing were about ensuring that we can provide you with the most secure and stable device possible. And it is also advisable to create the necessary environment in such a way that it can operate with the greatest security. Of course, as you can see, it may happen that someone only has 5 megabits per second, and then we need to figure out how they can solve this issue. Or, I don't know if in this case the situation could arise where, for example, they place the device at a parent's or a child's place, or if there is someone who you can safely place and operate it, as they can't do anything with it unless the cleaning lady unplugs it from the wall and the internet connection. But the point is that you should try to ensure, and it's not by chance that we said, if possible, don't use Wi-Fi, or definitely use a cable. And there was also the question of whether you can safely purchase the machines, because we won't change this. Yes, we won't change this. We published it so that you can naturally purchase in time, and it won't be a situation where suddenly, within a week, more than 1,400 machines are wanted. A validator is eligible to acquire a node on the market, as this would likely cause a problem. So, thank you very much, Jotzi, and also to Attila from afar, for this evening. As we promised, you have been continuously asking if the video can be rewatched, so I want to emphasize that all our videos can always be rewatched. Typically, if you pay attention, we usually share the video and upload it on the same day. I also mentioned that this video will be sent out to the validators, expectedly by tomorrow, and after that, a translation of this video will be made. Those living abroad, who have set their web office language to English, will receive the video in English, of course. So, thank you very, very much once again to everyone for being here. We hope we managed to summarize everything and convey all the information. However, if something is still unclear, first, please watch it again, and if it is still not clear, then send your question to customer service, and we will try to answer it for you. So thank you, have a good rest. Don't forget that you still have 2 days left from the August promotion, with the double career step. And the hatch tokens are in the LP3 package, which this affects. And well, on Monday it will already be September 2nd, so autumn is coming. Although summer is still in full swing, we don't know what autumn will be like. We'll see, but the point is that September is starting, and on Monday at 9 o'clock we will meet at the Vandekelon. I can't tell you yet who will hold the Vandekult, but rest assured that, as always, there will be new information, and we will strive to help and get things started. I wish you a good rest too, Jotzi, and thank you very much for your help. Bye.
You're very welcome. I hope I could help. I also wish everyone a nice evening. Goodbye.
Hey everyone.